This is a practical framework for how a healthy relationship works in less than 10 minutes. And not only is this framework rooted in evidence-based psychology, I'm breaking it into 5 components that make it intuitive to remember and easy to use. Before we jump in, it is worth knowing that Dr. Glenn and I created this framework by combining evidence-based research, clinical experience, and data from over 600 real-world case studies. Making it even more powerful is the fact that it applies to all relationships, platonic, romantic, family, etc. Okay, let's get into it. So component number 1, all relationships start and end with what we call regard. Regard is a term that we use to describe admiration, respect, and attraction. See, every relationship, friendship to romance, starts with a healthy sense of regard for the other person, but this looks a bit different in each type of relationship. For example, in creating a friendship, you need a healthy sense of regard, but your regard can come from an admiration of their personal or professional accomplishments. It could be because you find them fun to be around or perhaps charismatic and driven like you. It might even be because you respect the way they live their beliefs. In romance, though, regard is not only that sense of respect and admiration, but we also add to it the physical attraction that we might feel towards one's appearance and charisma. Regard is not only critical to having the desire to start a relationship, but it's also critical to your desire in maintaining that relationship. Meaning you're going to struggle to maintain desire for any relationship with a person that you no longer admire and respect. See, on one hand, you're going to gain regard for a person that acts in support of your deepest beliefs and underlying values, which we call core values. But on the other hand, you're going to lose regard whenever someone acts against your core values. Not only does this apply to platonic relationships, it applies romantically as well. Our idea of romantic attraction has to go beyond simply being physically attracted to someone, because your sense of romantic attraction is closely tied to the respect and admiration that you have for that person. We can't detach physical attraction from the respect and admiration within regard. And to prove this, I can ask a simple question. Have you ever felt repulsed by someone who is physically attractive? Most of us know that feeling. This is because while the person might be physically attractive and charismatic, we simply don't respect or admire the person underneath. So it doesn't matter how beautiful that person is, we find them repulsive despite how they might look. This is why we use the term regard, because it encompasses each of these important elements within the idea of attraction. Within a healthy relationship, 2 people hold each other in high regard. But within an unhealthy relationship, that sense of regard is damaged, and unless it's repaired, maintaining the relationship will feel nearly impossible. Because without regard for someone, we simply won't be able to maintain our desire for that relationship. Even more, the opposite of regard is what the Gottman Institute calls contempt, and it generally marks the end of a relationship. Okay, component 2. Healthy relationships have to be mutually and consistently rewarding. We're not talking from a financial standpoint, although that's most certainly a motivation for some people, but we're going to put them aside and not worry about them. We're talking emotionally rewarding. If you're going to spend time with a friend, you want that time to be rewarding in a way that you specifically appreciate. But the thing is, what you consider reward, I might not, right? Our sense of reward is again dictated by our individual core values. So again, I want to give you some examples. Some of you might find reward in deep and meaningful conversations with your friends, while others don't really need or even enjoy those deep conversations. Instead, they might find a sense of reward in spending time with friends, traveling, and exploring new places. The same thing goes for romantic relationships. We believe that when Dr. Gary Chapman wrote the 5 love languages, what he was really writing about was our sense of reward within romantic relationships. But this applies to all relationships, not just romantic ones. The closer we want to be with someone, the more we need to understand and speak their language of reward. But this is the place where I do want to point out and recognize the fact that all relationships are going to go through what we call storms. These are periods of time where the relationship just isn't as rewarding because maybe we're stuck in arguments and dealing with whatever challenges life brings us. But healthy relationships must be consistently rewarding to both people for the same reason that a business can't be successful by consistently losing money. When conflict and arguments are constantly draining the emotional energy of a relationship, it's only a matter of time until one or both people recognize that the relationship is no longer rewarding in any shape or form. Okay, component 3. Within a healthy relationship, both people reciprocate one another's invitations and emotional advances. Now, the idea of reciprocation is probably easiest to understand in the context of dating romantically. So let's say that you're in a bar, you approach a stranger to start a conversation. If they happen to brush you off by saying something like, "I'm not interested," you're unlikely to feel the desire to continue that conversation, right? This is because when someone rejects you or fails to reciprocate, it diminishes your desire to stay the course. But not only does this apply to all relationships, we forget that it applies at every stage of a relationship's development. For example, let's say that you're always calling a particular friend and asking them to hang out, but most of the time that friend turns you down. Whether they mean to or not, they are rejecting you. And each time they turn you down makes you that much less likely to actually ask again. Get turned down enough, and you might just stop inviting that friend out altogether. But the same thing goes in a marriage. Let's say that your spouse starts a makeout session with you, but you respond with the classic, "Honey, I'm tired. I'm super tired tonight. Can we just go to bed?" You might not think of this as rejection, but that's exactly what it is. And each time you turn down your spouse, it makes them that much less likely to initiate the next time. Whether we're looking at a friendship, a budding new romance in a bar, or a marriage of 10 years, when the relationship lacks reciprocation, it hurts our desire to stay the course. Healthy relationships must reciprocate both emotionally and within the effort to maintain the relationship. Component 4. Within a healthy relationship are two people who can relate to one another. You want to be understood. I want to be understood. This is a core human need. When two people share an alignment in values and interests, it makes it easy for them to relate to one another. And sure, within healthy relationships, we're still going to encounter conflict from time to time. That's normal and it's healthy. But when we're relatable, we have an easier time understanding the intentions behind one another's words and actions, despite what may have been said. On the other hand, when our values and interests are misaligned in a relationship, we struggle to understand one another. Without relatability, simple issues turn into major fights and arguments that are seemingly unresolvable. Now, I should say that in a friendship or family relationship, this is usually the place that there'll just be a natural distancing of the relationship. But between a couple where a marriage, a family, and a household is holding them together, the lack of relatability is what slowly leads them to grow apart. The reason for this is pretty simple, because if you can't understand what I'm experiencing, and I can't understand or relate to what you're experiencing, then why would we share it with each other? See, over time within a marriage or partnership, this is what leads couples to grow apart until they both feel like roommates rather than lovers or partners. But in a healthy relationship, we find two people who are putting in effort to consistently relate to one another's experiences. Last but not least, component 5. We need risk. We all want our friendships to remain fun, exciting, and adventurous. And when we add romance to the mix, we want all of that. And on top of it, we want passion. Well, risk is the possibility of an unwanted outcome. And it's actually the very thing that makes our relationships feel fun and adventurous. In fact, new relationships are so exciting because they're filled with risk and unknown possibilities. Whether we're talking about a friendship or a budding new romance, new relationships are filled with these unknown areas that are just waiting to be explored. The problem here, though, is that we're not really good at dealing with risk long term. All of us, as humans, are instinctually hardwired to avoid risk. And because of this, as a relationship matures, we often fall into these patterns and routines, or even the need for constant reassurance. Our very need for safety is what often robs the relationship of the risk needed for that feeling of excitement and adventure. And if you have a hard time grasping this concept, just think of it this way. Risk is what makes everything exciting and adventurous. Driving a car in a video game simulator will never provide the same adrenaline rush as racing a real car because, well, there is no risk or possibility of an accident or fear of death. Similarly, though, getting into an Ivy League school is only worth celebrating because most people fail. It's the risk or that potential for an unwanted outcome that makes every endeavor meaningful, adventurous, and exciting. Now, within a healthy relationship, both people respect one another's individuality, knowing that nothing is guaranteed. We embrace change and growth by seeking new experiences both together and individually. And when we can't share a particular experience together, we find time to communicate with one another what that experience was like. We find time to relate. In a healthy relationship, we embrace change and growth and how it can bring us closer together, so long as we're making time to relate to one another's experiences. That's it. If you guys enjoyed the episode, download our free guide, The Secret to Healthy Relationships, and consider subscribing to the podcast and channel for better relationships in weeks, not years. Peace.